Here in the studio is Yasser Louati. Yasser is the head of the human rights organization, the Justice and Liberties for All Committee. Yasser, thank you very much indeed for coming in. Let's go back to the start of the week, where Macron, interestingly, but it's an aside, he recorded the speech. He didn't want to do it live. Yes. He spoke to the nation in that recorded speech. What he said, is it enough to satisfy the Yellow Vest movement?
Emmanuel Macron seems to forget in which conditions he was elected. 51% of French voters abstained from voting, which actually questions his own legitimacy as a president. And the people who voted for him did so out of rejection for Marine Le Pen, which means he came with a program that nobody wanted. And now, as for the intervention he recorded and that he showed to the rest of the nation, it's not even too little too late, it's almost nothing. The increase in the minimum wage was actually an accounting trick by reducing some social contributions and then giving it to the net salary. But the main problem that Emmanuel Macron seems to forget is that it began with demonstrations against the increase in fuel prices, but it rapidly morphed into a protest against the very regime represented by Emmanuel Macron, which means a regime for the wealthy and content for the poor and the people who are struggling with globalization.
He invented a political party. So how does it look there amongst the lawmakers who are going to be casting their ballots either for or against him? Is he going to win this? Bearing in mind his party doesn't have the tradition that, of course, all those other more established ones do.
Emmanuel Macron didn't set up a political party per se. He just, set up a movement to fill a vacuum as the Socialist Party collapsed and the Conservatives, les Républicains, collapsed as well for corruption charges. What happened now with Emmanuel Macron is that he also has the majority in parliament, and 53% of the voters abstained during the parliamentary elections. So, of course, the vote of no confidence has very slim chances of passing. Nevertheless, was going to make the movement even more dangerous for Emmanuel Macron if this movement morphs into a gathering of all the unhappy people of France against Emmanuel Macron, his austerity-based politics, and the fact that Emmanuel Macron, as they feel legitimately, hijacked the election. Is either me or Marine Le Pen.
Looking at it from the outside, and you're obviously not doing that, but we are, from the outside, people are saying there's a revolution in France. People within France are saying, no, it's really not that serious. No. But the Yellow Vest movement has certainly had an impact. If the president has to go on TV to address the 700,000 plus people who over 4 weekends have come out onto the streets, it's obviously significant. But will it last? And what does it need to do if it wants to last, this movement?
Actually, your question is very on point. It's not a revolution, it's an insurrection, it's a revolt against the cost of living. But it's interesting to see how it rapidly morphed into contesting the Fifth Republic as we know it. But this movement, if it wants to become sustainable, it has to become structured, which is not the case, and it needs to become a point of rally for other communities in France. For example, minorities or ethnic and religious minorities in France have not joined the movement, because historically speaking, any time there was an uprising in France for social conditions and so on, the 30s, May 68, 1995 strikes, minorities were welcomed to give some kind of legitimacy as a universal movement. But once these movements become structured by the left, which is a white majority movement, all the questions dealing with the minorities, police brutality, discrimination, racism, etc., get cast aside, and it becomes a white-to-white negotiation. And that's why minorities have been standing on the side saying, you know what, do your thing, the day you become legitimate enough, we'll come and support you.
Very interesting. Yasser Louati, thank you very much for coming into the studio. I appreciate it.